So good day everyone. We are the group 4 and we are to tackle about a broad topic, food production and the environment. And first, it is composed of two subtopics, and the first is genetic revolution. Genetic revolution comes from the two words, genetic, which is a branch of biology concerned with the study of genes, and revolution, which means a sudden, radical, or quick change. So, genetic revolution talks about the change we experience relating to the origin of the development or kanang sa heredity, change in heredity or sa genes sa usa ka tawo or animals. Let us first define the words that we may encounter as we go on the discussion. First is genetics. Genetics comes from the word gen, means beginning. It is the study of how genes and traits are passed down from one generation to the next. For example is parents pass their traits onto their children. Genetics is the science of genes and how traits are passed from generation to the next. So, the study of genetics is studied by geneticists. The second term will be genes. Genes is defined as the part of the cell that determines an individual's trait such as eye color and shape. They are made of DNA and they come in pairs, half from the mother and the other half from the father. These genes carry information about the origin of a person. The closer we look, the more we learn. Kay, di ba yung tanga, liwat siya sa iyang mama kay kanang sa iyang kanang sa iyang mata, then liwat po siya sa iyang papa kay kanang iyang skin color, for example. Then the next term is the DNA or the deoxyribonucleic acid, which is according to Merriam-Webster, any of various nucleic acid that are usually the molecular basis of heredity. It is also an amazing chemical present in every cell and contains all the information cells need to make an organism. So DNA DNA starts out as a single cell and grow into trillions of cells. This tells the single cell to divide into 2 cells, then 4, then 8, until a whole body forms. Since it comes from a single cell, it controls the growth of everything and influences many individual traits such as sex, whether you are a boy or a girl, and physique, whether you are tall or short, and many more. The next term is genome. A genome is all the DNA in a cell, including all the genes. Humans' genetic information, as genome is referred. New technology has enabled scientists to look closely at the entire human genome, such as the figure on the side, which is the PCR machine, which copies DNA so that we can study it. Scientists can also compare genomes of different animals and figure out how they are similar and or different from the technology used. Living organisms. In living organisms, genomes are stored in long molecules of DNA called chromosomes. Then the next is history of genetics. The science of genetics began in the 1800s when Gregor Mendel, the figure on the side, figured out how traits are inherited by studying peas. So Gregor Mendel is a Moravian scientist and Augustinian friar. Scientists identified genes in the mid-1900s. The field of genetics has grown by then. The field of genetics has grown by leaps and bounds. So Gregor Mendel observed observed as he is studying the piece as his experiment. He observed that organisms inherit traits by the way of discrete units of inheritance. Theories of genetics. The first theory on genetics is the genetic law of nature. Emir Aesthetics, a Hungarian noble, developed the basic principles of mutation. Mutation is a change in a DNA sequence. It resulted from DNA copying mistakes made during cell division, exposure to ionizing radiation, and exposure to chemicals called mutagens or infection by viruses. The next theory is blending inheritance. A popular theory during the 19th century and implied by Charles Darwin's 1859 on the origin of species. So this figure is the figure on blending inheritance. So blending inheritance theory states that an offspring inherits any characteristic as the average of the parents' values of that characteristic. So, according to blending inheritance theory, an offspring may inherit the characteristic of its parents. Average ra iyang ma-inherit di good ka ng fully good, like kaning sa figure. Blending inheritance is the idea that individuals inherit a smooth blend of traits from their parents. The next theory is inheritance of acquired characteristics. It is a belief that individuals inherit traits strengthened by their parents, common associated with Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. This theory is now known to be wrong. The experience of individuals do not affect the genes they pass to their children. This theory, inheritance of acquired characteristic, is wala na siya gi-consider nun nga apil sa nga katuuhan. In the experience of the parents, di man siya maka-affect sa genes nga mapasa nila sa ilahang mga anak. Outside element naman siya. The next is pangenesis by Charles Darwin, which had both acquired and inherited aspects. So, ang pangenesis according to Charles Darwin is ma-acquire siya and ma-inherited. The genes can be acquired and inherited. Next is Francis Galton's reformulation of pangenesis, both particulate and inherited. Molecular genetics. Although genes were known to exist in chromosomes, and chromosomes are composed of both protein and DNA, scientists did not know which of the two is responsible for inheritance. Until in 1952, the Hershey-Chase experiment confirmed that DNA, rather than protein, is the genetic material of the viruses that infect bacteria, providing further evidence that DNA is the molecule responsible for inheritance. So, kaning molecular genetics is they are doing an experiment or they are doing a study whether asa makuha ang which one is responsible for inheritance nga kanang mga traits nga naa sa parents is ma-pass down sa ilahang mga anak. So they confirmed that it is the DNA which is responsible for inheritance. Molecular genetics.
Today, I am Maria M. Montemayor, your second reporter of the topic Genetic Revolution. Natural selection and evolution. It is a process where organisms that are better adapted to an environment will survive and reproduce. The advantageous alleles of these variant organisms are passed on to offspring. For further explanation, let us refer to the figure. So we could see that there are mice and there is an eagle. These are the same species of mice, so they can breed with each other, and they could pass down their DNA to their offspring. And naturally, there is variety in these mice. So uban sa mice is color white, di ba? Makita nato. Ang uban is color black. Even if the same species sila, they have different variety of traits. So there is the predator. Ang predator diri is kanang eagle. And the eagle is mas daling makita niya ang color white nga mice kaysa color black nga mice. So bisan po kita maglantaw sa figure, mas makita gud nato ang color white kaysa color black. So in this particular environment, the darker mice are having an easier time surviving and potentially more fitness to breed. So since ang white mice ang makita sa eagle, so sila mo'y makaon. So dali silang mahurot. So ang magpabili na lang is kanang color black nga mice, darker mice. So sila mo'y mas dakog chance of survival, and sila mo'y mas makapadaghan in the next generation. So ako rang klarohon no ug unsa tong meaning sa fitness ganina. So fitness in the biological term is not how long they live, but how many, or if their capability of how many offspring they will have. So since ang lighter mice or the white mice ang daling makitaan and sila mo'y daling mahurot kay sila kanon sa eagle, the darker mice will have the higher chance of capability to reproduce. So the darker mice pass down their DNA to the offspring so that the new baby mice will have the DNA from their parents. So diri na nato makuan ang natural selection. So the lighter mice are being selected against since they are easier to see in their habitat. And over a long period of time, we could see that there will be more higher frequency of darker mice. So sa ikatulong picture makita nato nga mas daghan na jud ang darker mice or the black mice. And if it continues for a very long time, it could even result that in that particular environment, all the mice will be dark. So magkawala ang evolution, which is change over time, could take place because natural selection has occurred. Natural selection is a mechanism of evolution. And one thing to point out is it doesn't necessarily mean the allele for lighter color is gone completely. The allele could be recessive and carried within the population. Mutations. During the process of DNA replication, errors occasionally occur in the polymerization. Polymerization means the reduplication of parts in an organism of the second strand. Many people understand that mutation is a change of genetic material, more specifically a change in nucleic acids. The RNA and DNA are both types of nucleic acid. Therefore, anything with RNA or DNA can have a mutation. That means animals, plants, and humans can all have mutations. The following are examples of mutation. Mutation in this garden mouse roses has caused some of the flowers to grow orange rather than yellow. So makita nato sa figure nga ang uban na color sa flower is color yellow, ang uban is color orange. Bisan usara na siya ka flower. Usa ra ka tanong. Example number 2 is a fairly common mutation in mice causes bands in the coat around the body. So makita nato no nga ang ilaga diha sa kilid is kuan kanang iyahang lawas is naay lingin nga color white. So na example number 3, a common mutation in humans causes red blood cells to be shaped in a sickle pattern as shown in the figure. This mutation is known as sickle cell anemia. Sickle cell anemia is the disorder that can make it difficult for your red blood cells to carry oxygen because the shape of the red blood cell is affected from this mutated hemoglobin protein. This can lead to anemia and other diseases, and there is no cure for the disorder yet. So, sa mutation, makita nato nga ang So, if ang mutation ma-happen sa animals and plants, so ma-amaze ta no? Ma-amaze ta sa iyahang kuan kay, wow, kay kuan ra siya ba? Murag, talag sa kay ito makakita nga inana. Pero if sa humans, ang mutation is usually makakos siyag disease. So, murag, negative effect ang makuha if ang humans will have mutation. Pero if ang plants and animals, it will make them unique. So, murag na tinangalat no, nganong wala dyan na mo na topic ang genetic revolution. It is because kinahanglan pa nato sabton iyang components, mga theories, definition, unsa man jud ang factor nga naka-lead to genetic revolution. So, the relevance of mutation and natural selection to the genetic revolution is very significant. The mutation is the ultimate source of all genetic diversity. Mutation and natural selection are the critical initial step in genetic evolution, timan ina, because it produces a new DNA sequence for a specific gene, resulting in a new allele. A genetic revolution that changes gene activity or protein function might cause an organism to develop new features. The genetic revolution is more likely to be handed on to the next generation if a favorable characteristic helps the individual life and reproduce.
Good day, everyone. Today, we will proceed with the environmental effects of food production. But before we tackle about the environmental effects, let us know first the definition of food production. Food production is a process wherein raw materials are converted into food products for human use either in the home or in food processing industries. Food production is a process in transforming your raw materials or raw ingredients such as crops, raw meat, grains, seeds, vegetables, and poultry into edible food products. Example for this are canned foods like sardines, beef loaf, corned beef, and it also has hot dogs, sausages, fries, and etc. Food production can be categorized into different types, such as cultivating, crop production and management, harvesting, fermenting, baking, stewing, braising, and grilling. There are two classifications of food production. These are traditional food production and modern food production. Traditional food production is a method that uses manual steps or step-by-step process in making or in doing food processing. This includes slow processes. Example for traditional food productions are thermal processing, Thermal processing is a food sterilization technique in which the food is heated in a high temperature enough to destroy microbes and enzymes. Then we have the mechanical processing. Mechanical processing is a food processing that utilizes extrusion, large mixing, grinding, chopping, and emulsifying equipment in the production. Fermentation. Fermentation is a natural process through which microorganisms like yeast and bacteria convert carbohydrates such as starch and sugar into alcohol or acids. And then we have the germination or malting. Germination is a process where seeds begin to grow and sprout. And the second classification of food production is the modern food production. Modern food production is a method that uses technology to maximize the efficiency of agricultural production. Modern food production allows not only to produce maximum products from the maximum amount of raw materials using rational processing and other methods, but also to preserve products for a longer period of time to avoid damage and rejections, which is no less important. The examples of modern food productions are fertilizers. Fertilizers is a natural or artificial substance containing the chemical elements that improve growth and the productiveness of plants. So fertilizer, common naman ni siya kayo nato, mo ni siya chemical hazards nga na makapahimo sa tanom sa mga mo siya gamiton sa mga farmers para ang ilang tanom mudako dayon sada pud siya lang tawon. Then the insecticides. Insecticides are used to protect crops against insects, fungi, and other kinds of bacteria. Herbicides are also commonly known as weed killers, are chemicals for killing or inhibiting the growth of unwanted plants. And then we have the antibiotics and growth promotants. Before I proceed to the next slide, I would like to add some information or some data about the food production. Food production have three types. These are the primary, secondary, and tertiary. Primary food process for production turns agricultural products into something that can eventually be eaten. Example is milling grain to create flour. Then the secondary food processing production is the everyday process of creating food from ingredients that are ready to use. Example is making sausages or fermenting fish. Pwede po siya magama kag bread. Then we have the last one is the tertiary. It is commercial production of what is commonly called processed foods. Example of this are ready to eat foods or mga canned foods or katong mga pagkaon nga ma-preserve nimo bisag kanus pa nimo siya kanon di yung pwede siya initon ra. the slide, you can see the affected areas of food production. These are biodiversity, soil. The categories of soil is erosion and infertility, salinization, waterlogging, desertification, then the water, air, and human health. This will be discussed by RENALYN DELGADO, our next reporter in our topic. Thank you and God bless.
Good day, sir. I am Delgado RENALYN, and this is the continuation of the report of Group 4. Biodiversity loss, conversion of grasslands, forests, and wetlands to crops or rangelands. Fish kills from pesticide runoff. Loss of agrobiodiversity replaced by monoculture strains. Killing of wild predators to protect livestock. So, when we say biodiversity loss, it is the worldwide extension of different species as well as the local reduction or loss of species in a certain habitat. So, I have here a short clip of biodiversity loss.
Loss of biodiversity. Human activities are the major threat to biodiversity. The important factors leading to extinction of species and consequent loss of biodiversity are habitat loss and fragmentation, overexploitation, alien species invasions, and co-extinctions. Habitat loss and fragmentation. Habitat loss is the primary threat to the biodiversity. Natural habitats, which protect natural flora and fauna, are being converted to human settlements, dams, reservoirs, croplands, and grazing grounds. Deforestation deprives animal life of shelter and food. This decreases the population of many species. Deforestation declines reproductive capacity of certain wild animals due to reduced area of their free movement. Migratory animals are also affected by deforestation because of the disturbance in their routes. Habitat fragmentation is an ecological process in which a large piece of habitat is divided into smaller pieces of habitats. Usually, this process is caused by human activities. It leads to decline of many wildlife species because fragmentation tends to decrease population productivity.
That's all for biodiversity loss, and now we're moving on to soil erosion. So, soil erosion means gradual destruction of soil components caused by wind, water, or other natural agents. Loss of fertility, inability of the soil to maximize plant productivity. So, when we say soil erosion, it is a process that involves the wearing away of the topsoil. So I have a short clip of soil erosion here.
The removal of top fertile layer of soil by agents like wind and water is called soil erosion. Soil erosion makes fertile land barren, resulting in poor harvest. During rains, water flows in rivers and canals. Along with water, upper layer of soil is carried away and gets deposited at other places. Not only rains, strong winds also carry soil from one place to another. Soil erosion by wind generally occurs in the areas having very less plants. The roots of trees act as soil binders. Trees also slow down the speed of wind and flowing water. Cutting down of trees in large number leads to soil erosion.
So that's all for soil erosion, and now I will be discussing about salinization. Salinization is the process of increasing the salt content in the soil caused by repeated application of irrigation water. Waterlogging, too much water in the plant's growth zone. Desertification, the process in which the productive potential of topsoil falls
by 10% or more because of a combination of prolonged growth and human activities that expose topsoil to erosion.
Waterlogging and soil salinity. Waterlogging is the saturation of soil with water. Waterlogging leads to the process of salinization. Salinization is the accumulation of soluble salts of sodium, magnesium, and calcium in soil to the extent that soil fertility is severely decreased. Increased salt in the root zone hinder plant roots from withdrawing water from surrounding soil.
And that's all for my report today. Thank you.
Hi guys, I'm RHEA Francisco, a Group 4 reporter, and this is the continuation to the report of RENALYN DELGADO. These are the other environmental effects of water. Aquifer depletion. Aquifer depletion is a lack of sufficient available freshwater resources. Increased runoff, sediment pollution, and flooding from cleared land. Pollution from pesticides and alga blooms and fish kills caused by runoff of fertilizer and farm waste. The other one is air pollution. Emissions of greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide from fossil fuel use, nitrous oxide from inorganic fertilizer use, and methane from cotton. And the other air pollutants from fossil fuels use and pesticide sprays. Muna yung makakause of air pollution. And the last one is human health. Nitrates in drinking water, blue baby. So this is the common cause nga nung naay blue baby. So once galit food kita makakaon or makainom taog kuan food nga made with nitrate contaminated water, makakause po na siya og kuan serious health condition nato. So makaapekto po na siya ato ang human health. And the other is pesticide residues in water, food, and air. So makaapekto po na siya sa atong health. Livestock waste in drinking and swimming water. So another makaapekto. Bacterial contamination of meat. So another po nga cause po na siya or maka-epekto po na siya sa atong health. So, I have a short video to learn more about the environmental effects of food production.
The world population is increasing exponentially, and there are too many people to rely on natural methods of making food for most of us. So we are forced to rely on industrial techniques. 100 years ago, farm animals were allowed to roam freely until they were used for food. But now, in factory farms, animals are kept in small cages indoors. The factory animals are kept and killed inhumanely. After hatching, male chicks are killed immediately, but the female ones are kept to produce eggs and are killed 42 days after, when they've gained so much weight so quickly that they're suffering. The chickens are kept in very small cages, barely big enough for the chicken to fit. The cages are stacked on top of each other, and the chicken's poop falls on the chicken beneath them. The chicken's beaks are also cut to prevent them from pecking each other since they're so close. When it's time for the chickens to be slaughtered, they're hung upside down and their throats are cut. Next, they are put into boiling water and their feathers are plucked. However, sometimes the chickens are not fully dead before they are put into the boiling water, so they're suffering during the process. Similarly, when cows are killed, sometimes they're not stunned correctly before their throats are cut, which causes them to suffer unnecessarily. Even before dairy cows are killed, they suffer because of the process we use for milking in factory farms. The cows are never taken off the milking device. This continual suction on the udders causes bleeding and infection, which causes blood and pus to get into the milk. This is one reason why the milk is pasteurized. Since so many people drink milk and eat so much meat, there is a need for many cows. This huge amount of cows creates a lot of manure, which releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, and this cow manure releases the biggest amount, even more than car pollution, which accelerates global warming. The unsanitary conditions in factory farms make it necessary for cows and chickens to take a large number of antibiotics. These antibiotics are preventing them from getting sick, but they're causing the bacteria to mutate and become stronger, and the medicine may not be able to keep up. These antibiotics are ingested by us through the animal's meat. This leads to superbugs that are difficult to treat with normal antibiotics. You're not only consuming chemicals from your meat, but also from your crops. Traditionally, crops are treated with pesticides and herbicides so that they remain healthy. Recently, organic foods have been a way for people to avoid these chemicals, but organic foods may not be as safe as you think. Some farmers don't spray their crops while they're being grown, but after they're cut, they spray the crops with chemicals to keep them fresh. These crops are considered to be organically grown. Some people are also fooled by the label of free-range chickens. They think that these chickens go wherever they want, but actually, the chickens are kept inside for most of their life. And then, in the last couple days, they're given the option to go outside. Since the chicken is used to being inside, it doesn't have the desire to go outside. Also, the outdoor enclosure is very small. Corn is the only food source for these chickens, and a major crop grown in the U.S. Corn byproducts are found in everything, even though corn doesn't have a high nutritional value. Instead of growing all this corn for food, we should be creating corn ethanol from it. This corn ethanol is used to make biofuels, which is a better alternative to fossil fuels. The standard method of using fossil fuels as fuel pollutes the environment. Biofuels are a renewable energy source, unlike fossil fuels. To help the environment, support your local farmers and try to grow as much of your own food as possible. We should try to limit our use of factory-farmed meat to prevent the suffering of these animals. Antibiotics used in factory farming and chemicals used on crops not only end up in your food, but also in the environment. This not only negatively affects you, but also harms our planet. Relying less on factory farming can let us use corn for making biofuels instead of for animal feed. Biofuels will also help our planet by reducing pollution.